Thank you, everybody, and thank you to the Carlsberg Foundation for bringing everybody together now that I'm in town. It's wonderful to see so many friends, all the archaeologists together. That's really a special occasion, so I'm very happy to be here. Good. So, after the Second World War, it was no longer possible for foreigners to get permission to do archaeological fieldwork in Greece without the mediation of an official foreign archaeological school in Greece. Danish archaeologists managed to work on permits generally shared by the Swedish Institute at Athens. However, in 1992, the combined efforts of the representatives of several institutions and Bertel Haarder, then Minister of Education, I'm sorry that he had to leave, now that I mention him, succeeded in establishing a Danish institute. On the birthday of Hans Christian Andersen, the Danish Institute at Athens opened under the direction of Søren Ditz. DIA, as we call ourselves, has its judicial seat at the Ministry of Higher Education and Research. Its board consists of 9 representatives from the Ministry of Higher Education and Research, the Ministry of Children, Education and Gender Equality, the Ministry of Culture, the Foreign Ministry, the National Museum, the University of Aarhus, the University of Copenhagen, University of Southern Denmark, the Royal Academy of Fine Arts, Academic Council. The current chairman of the board is Bodil Due of the University of Aarhus. So, the privileged situation we find ourselves in today, as you can see on the photo, located in the old center of Athens, on top of the archaic agora, into beautifully restored neoclassical buildings associated with a large modern auditorium, is due to generous donations from the Carlsberg Foundation in 1993 and 1995, and the Velux Foundation in 2000. These facilities allow us to host lectures, conferences, seminars, and resident scholars, which is an important part of our research infrastructure, as well as exhibitions, concerts, and resident artists. I don't know how many of you can actually read that. Conferences in particular are an extremely important academic tool to get valuable feedback from other researchers on your results even before you publish. Engaging actively with your peers is the most direct way to gain access to the most current research, whatever your field of study is. DIA provides the conference facilities to Danish scholars free of charge, and I'm happy to say that many projects take advantage of this. Sometimes in collaboration with DIA, other times autonomously organized. The obvious advantage of having your conference in Athens is the additional audience provided by the multiple international research institutions based there. Of course, there can be no institution without people. The administrative staff to support our activities consists of 4 people, and we're currently in the process of finding a much-awaited new vice director. According to the statute, the Institute aims to promote research, education, and culture in Greek and Mediterranean archaeology, history, language, literature, visual arts, architecture, and cultural traditions. DIA is also a cultural institute, but this work is less relevant for today's conference. According to Greek law, the foreign institutes or schools are registered by the Greek Ministry of Culture as archaeological schools, which means that they are non-profit archaeological research institutions. The functions of the schools are defined in the Greek law on protection of antiquities and cultural heritage of 2002, according to which the schools are obliged to administer all archaeological research conducted in Greece by scholars in their native countries. The schools are privileged to conduct archaeological field research on Greek soil under a number of conditions, including the maintenance of a research library accessible to Greek scholars, and that they publish the results of their work in a scientific journal. The Nordic Library, a collaborative institution shared by the 4 Scandinavian institutes, which opened in 1995, responds to the first condition. The proceedings of the Danish Institute at Athens and the monograph series to the second. The library and the 2 publication series are, of course, also an important part of our infrastructure to support Danish researchers and promote Danish research internationally. And in fact, proceedings, we've been talking, Birte was mentioning prices, so proceedings are actually available online. Any foreign archaeological school in Greece, no matter the size of the population, is allowed a maximum of 6 active field projects at any given time. 3 collaborative projects, so-called synergasias, and 3 autonomous projects. In general, a collaborative project can be anything from co-funding and daily collaboration to simply adding names on the publications. That depends entirely on the personal collaboration of the directors and the available resources on both sides. The application deadline falls every year on the 30th of November, which does not include the study of material for which permission can be sought at any time. In fact, DIA need not be administratively involved with permissions for the study of material, as they are applied for personally by the researcher. Archaeologically speaking, the Danish Institute at Athens has been very active. Since its inauguration in 1992, DIA has mediated 9 fieldwork permits to Danish scholars, 10 if we include the Swedish-Greek-Danish collaboration at Chania. So the list is on Kefalenia, directed by Claus Ransborg, supported by the Ministry of Education. On Roads and at Kalkis, directed by Søren Ditz, supported by the Consul General Gösta Engboms Foundation. At Caledon, directed by respectively Søren Ditz, Rune Frederiksen and Søren Handberg, supported by the Consul General Gösta Engboms Foundation, the New Carlsberg Foundation and the Carlsberg Foundation. On Mount Pelion, directed by Niels Andreasen, supported by the Danish Council for Independent Research. At Piraeus, directed by Bjørn Lovén, supported by the Carlsberg Foundation, and Lechion, supported by the Carlsberg and the Augustinus Foundations. And finally, at Delphi and Sikion, directed by Rune Frederiksen, supported by the Carlsberg Foundation. The projects are very different and derive from very different milieus, including projects with a strong prehistorical focus, such as the Kefalenia and the Mount Pelion projects. Some have involved a small number of people, such as the Delphi project, consisting of Erik Hansen and Gregers Algren Ussing, which I would argue that what they lack in size, they make up for in quality. Other projects, such as Caledon, bring as much as 75 people into the field during the season, which of course does not reversely reflect the quality of the project, I should probably add. So, currently, DIA has 3 active field synergasias, all supported by the Carlsberg Foundation. At Caledon, co-directed by Søren Handberg of the University of Oslo and Olympia Vikatu, FO of Etolia, Akanania and Lefkada. At Lechion, co-directed by Bjørn Lovén from the University of Copenhagen and Dimitris Gourgomeli of the Underwater Efforet, co-funded by the Augustinus Foundation. And at Sikion, co-directed by, Rune Frederiksen, but soon to be Silke Myth Frederiksen from the National Museum, and Konstantinos Kissas, FO of Antiquities of Corinth. All research associated with DIA is covered by external funding, and each project director is responsible for finding such funding. Now, you already heard one, but the co-director of the Piraeus project is also giving a paper today, so I shall focus more on the framework of the archaeological field projects in Greece, which is where DIA is mainly involved. And where it's appropriate, I'm going to use the Caledon project to exemplify my observations. As mentioned, the project is a so-called synergasia. So it's a collaborative project, in this case between the Danish Institute at Athens and the Efforet of Etolia, Akanania and Lefkada, co-directed by Søren Handberg, and the FO, Olympia Vikatu, represented during the field season by Yorgos Stamatis. The different staff of the project is employed by DIA on short-term contracts during the field season. The project is a traditional archaeological field project in the finest sense of the word, focused on answering archaeological research questions based on archaeological methodology with the aid of a range of auxiliary sciences and the latest technologies, what I would call a multidisciplinary archaeological project. Now, I cannot claim long-founded expertise on Greek field archaeology, as I've only been the director of DIA for, well, less than 6 months. But to my mind, there are 3 obvious issues of management of field projects in Greece, which create potential long-term issues, resulting in unexpected delays and expenses. Expropriation of land, availability of permanent storage space, and site preservation. The responsibility of these 3 issues has in the past been considered national issues, but it is easy to understand how this is not sustainable in countries such as Greece, with the daily unearthing of a fabulously rich material cultural heritage. If we wish to do fieldwork abroad, we must share the burden as well as the privilege. According to Greek law, systematic excavation on private property is prohibited, which means that unless the land is already owned by the state, the land will have to be expropriated. This is an essential prerequisite for the granting of an excavation permit. Of course, some of the land of known archaeological significance is owned by the Greek state already. But property ownership continues to be a challenge because of complex inheritance laws and irregular registration. According to Greek law, ancient artifacts can only be stored by the local efforts, which may complicate fieldwork considerably. There may not be facilities in the vicinity. The facilities may not provide the workspace required by modern projects, or there may be restrictions on access. For the Calydon project, an old warehouse was purchased in 2006 with a donation from the New Carlsberg Foundation, which provide ample storage and workspace, securing possible research in the area for many years to come. But of course, such an investment is expensive and not without administrative and organizational problems. Finally, also according to Greek law, primary consideration shall be given to the concern of the excavator for the consolidation, conservation, and presentation of excavated antiquities. Site preservation is not an easy issue because it serves multiple purposes. If the goal is to preserve in situ, backfilling is the most efficient solution. But this, of course, does not attract tourists. Therefore, the interests of site preservation are often on collision course. The problem with any solution other than backfilling is that the concept of long-term preservation of ancient structures remain a bit of an illusion under the cruel Mediterranean sun. Fortunately, photogrammatical 3D scanning now allows the Calydon project to record and preserve the site in its pristine state right after excavation, although this is, of course, only in the virtual world. Measures have to be taken and re-evaluated every season to secure the conservation of the exposed structures. Part of the conditions for acquiring fieldwork permits is the scientific publication of the results. Of the completed projects, only the Kefalenia project is fully published, and the monograph on Mount Pelion is coming out very soon. However, all the longer-running projects have started the process of publication, as you can see on the right side of the slide. 2 additional volumes from Chalkis and 3 from Piraeus are in the pipelines, and then there will, of course, be a number of publications on the excavations at the theatre and the lower Acropolis at Calydon. The monograph series is important for the branding of Danish archaeology in Greece and for DIA, and I have complete faith that all our projects will produce high-quality publications with a long-term impact. However, I would like to address particularly the question of publication as an essential and particularly challenging part of fulfilling the potential of any archaeological research. Publications of the results of multi- or interdisciplinary archaeological projects are an enormous challenge which require the collaboration of many different people from different sciences. Our general record is not very impressive in this respect, but the responsibility must be shared. Some types of studies, in fact, most natural sciences with which I am familiar from my own fieldwork, work quite quickly. When you have decided what type of test you want to do. They don't really require a lot of deliberation, and technicians do the actual tests. And I'm wondering how many natural science people I'm now offending. Archaeological studies, on the other hand, tend to be much slower, requiring highly skilled, much sought-after experts to go through a huge number of finds without actually knowing what they will find. Interpretation is still based mainly on observations which cannot be produced mechanically. Apprenticeship, masterclasses, and experience remain irreplaceable. If we look at the schedule of field projects, the finds registration and study is often underfunded, relying on scholars in full-time positions to spend their holidays sorting through material, recording and photographing before they get to the actual interpretation and writing up. We need to reach a better understanding amongst ourselves and our collaborators and the funding bodies on commitment, scheduling, and funding for the publication work. This is in the best interest of everybody, as interest in projects drop as the years go by, and technological advancements make long-awaited publications appear outdated. Even so, fieldwork publications are as close to eternal life as most of us shall ever get. They stand as monuments to what is lost, but have been preserved within these pages, paper or virtual. However, in this postmodern age, they've also become somehow outmoded because we find it increasingly difficult to insist on the separation of fact from interpretation. We're not satisfied with simply stating what we found and how old it is. We want to know what it means, not only on its own, but in relation to everything else we know, and preferably with relevance to something that is of general interest to the public, which, of course, in some respects is also ourselves. For this, we try and broaden the horizon of our projects and actively integrate researchers from other disciplines. I'm not referring to arranging for a geologist to tell us where our pottery comes from, or a philologist to read our inscriptions. We have been doing that type of collaboration very successfully for generations. The challenge really is the move from multidisciplinary to interdisciplinary, where we attempt to integrate the multiple methodologies in the formulation of the research questions, and where the interpretation of the results is forged in the living dialogue between the disciplines. The concentrated effort on large-scale multidisciplinary projects promoted by the Danish National Research Foundation has had great intellectual impact. Considering the large number of conferences and publications the Center for Black Sea Research at the University of Aarhus and the Textile Center at the University of Copenhagen have generated. These centers provide the critical mass, the infrastructure, and the money necessary for truly interdisciplinary research, and I feel very privileged to have shared in the experience of the Black Sea Center. However, the downside is a potentially undesirable alignment of research in a country as small as Denmark, considering the limited number of people involved in archaeological research in Denmark and the limited number of positions for people of the same specialization. In this respect, there is much to say for the EU project model, where the most qualified collaborators are sought and located all over the world. The downside of this model is, of course, the physical distance and the multiple other commitments of the scholars involved. I've also had the privilege of participating in a globally based multidisciplinary project in Cyprus, and it can be very difficult to pin down a collaborator in Oregon or in Sydney, even with the latest electronic communication. Of course, the archaeological field projects are not exclusive in their focus on ancient Greece. In recent times, several other Danish research projects have drawn at least partly on the material culture of the ancient Greek world. Projects which could have included field projects to broaden their perspectives. And I apologize in advance to anyone I've failed to mention. I'm happy to say that all of these projects have taken advantage of the facilities provided by DIA. On the other hand, the three current synergasias at DIA are fundamentally archaeological in their conception, focused on answering archaeological research questions based on archaeological methodology with the aid of a range of auxiliary sciences and technologies. They also honor the concept of starting small, hoping to grow bigger as the potential is revealed to be developed. All the projects have, in my opinion, the potential to become large-scale interdisciplinary projects. However, the collaborative efforts to develop, find funding for, and run such a project is an enormous personal investment for everybody involved. Archaeologically speaking, I consider DIA extremely successful, possibly to the point of overstretching our staff, considering our other obligations. DIA has never before hosted 3 active synergasias, as well as an autonomous field project. Additionally, we hope to add a new autonomous field project at Palais Sichny, co-directed by Stephen McPhillips, to our portfolio in 2016. And we're of course also involved in the new Carlsberg-funded research project in Rhodes, directed by Winther-Jacobsen. As you can see from the list, the tendency in the past for projects to be embedded at DIA was stronger. Part of the reason for this change is the pressure from funding bodies to secure permanent position for project members, which of course DIA cannot provide. In my personal opinion, it is an advantage that projects are embedded at institutions in Denmark, which have considerably more resources than DIA. The museums and the universities employ the scholars and they train the students, supported by DIA of course. Although the director and the amanuenses of DIA have often and should continue to be involved in field projects, the most important role of the Foreign Archaeological School is not to do research, but to facilitate and administer permits and publish the results, thereby promoting Danish research on the whole. What we mean to achieve in Athens to increase our visibility and position as an attractive research partner is funding for longer-term residencies for scholars involved in our projects so that they can become actively involved in DIA's daily benchmarking of Danish research into Greek and Mediterranean culture. Close collaboration between DIA, the research institutions in Denmark, the funding bodies, as well as our Greek partners, is, I believe, a key element in the continual development of strong Danish research projects in Greece, archaeological or otherwise. Thank you for your time.
Many thanks to Kristina for this overview. It sure is an active place, and it's good to see that so much is going on, and it is becoming even more active. Now, I would like to ask the first question. What is your advice to someone who would like to start up a fieldwork project in Greece? Call Kristina, get the money and call Kristina.
Well,
or call Kristina first.
Yes, well, you should probably call me first. Yeah. But as I mentioned, we only have the 6 permits, of course, and at the moment we have 3 synergasias, so we have no available synergasias, and we hopefully have 2 autonomous projects. So what I have available is an autonomous project to anyone interested. So I hope there will be someone.
Yeah. So there is no secrecy, no little committees that sit and sort in people, and I mean it is an open game.
It is an open game, yes, it certainly is. At this point, of course, if there are 2 people who contact us, we would then eventually have to choose. But so far we have the permits available, so no one should be afraid.
5 minutes for questions and comments to Kristina. There is a question there.
Line Bjerg, Kongelige Møntkabinettet, Stockholm. Hvordan ser du, how do you see your role in a future, especially as Greece is a bit unstable at the moment?
Well, I don't think that our role is much affected by what's going on in Greece, because I still think that our role is to promote Danish research into Greek culture. And we do that to a large extent with the collaboration of the institutions in Denmark. We also need collaboration with our Greek partners, but the Greek partners that we collaborate with will be there no matter how dire the straits are, I believe, anyway. Archaeology in Greece and research into the ancient past will survive in Denmark as well, which I might add at this point. I'm absolutely certain. I didn't write a big defense of the research into the ancient world, because I thought in this forum, possibly it's not what I need to do. So I still think that there will always be strong partners in Greece who are interested in collaboration, and there will always be excellent scholars in Denmark interested in the Greek world, and it is our job to bring them together.